Hello ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to see you again in today's news program. Here, we and you will share and interact with the latest news and hottest events that are of interest to the public at home, and welcome back to the news channel of Nghe An Newspaper and radio and television on YouTube platform.
On September 21st, Poland's TVP World reported that recent Russian airspace violations on NATO's eastern flank have raised new concerns in a region already tense since Moscow launched its military operation in Ukraine in 2022. In the latest incident on March 19, a Russian military aircraft reportedly violated Estonian airspace for 12 minutes, marking Moscow's third violation of NATO airspace in less than 2 weeks. Then called the incident an unprecedented act of arrogance, Estonian Prime Minister Kristen Mikke also announced that the Baltic nation had requested the activation of NATO's Article 4, which requires member states to consult when a country believes its territorial integrity or security is threatened. Amid a growing number of Russian airspace violations, which many EU officials see as a calculated attempt by Moscow to challenge NATO's defense capabilities, Defense Minister Lodovin Sakhalin has suggested that European members of NATO could learn from fellow alliance ally Thursday Nye Kentucky. On the social media platform X, Ms. Sakhalin wrote, "NATO's borders in the northeast are being deliberately tested. We need real action." Turkey set an example 10 years ago. It's worth pondering. By this, Ms. Sakhalin was referring to Thursday Nikai's shooting down of a Russian Su-24 in 2015. Meanwhile, Minzadak, head of the International Policy Department, the Polish president's foreign affairs advisory body, said that Warsaw fully supports Estonia's request to trigger NATO's Article 4 Arpidak, said the Estonian side, through the prime minister, had requested to start consultations under Article 4, as Poland did a few days ago after the drone incursions. "We will most likely participate in these discussions, but there must be a political and economic response to Russia's provocative actions." Arpidak added that this was part of a provocation and an attempt to once again test and escalate tensions not only in the countries whose airspace was violated, but also in the entire North Atlantic alliance. For its part, the Russian Defense Ministry denied allegations that the Mi-31 fighter jets violated Estonian airspace, according to the Russian state news agency TASS on March 20. The Defense Ministry of this country announced that the flight of the Mi-31 aircraft was carried out in accordance with international airspace regulations, without violating the borders of other countries, and this was confirmed by recent surveillance. The Russian Defense Ministry statement also stated that during the entire flight, the Russian planes did not deviate from the designated flight path and that the flight path was over the neutral waters of the Baltic Sea, more than 3 km from Vainu Island. Russia had previously denied allegations by NATO member Romania that the Moscow drone had entered its airspace. Moscow stressed that no evidence had been presented to prove that the drone belonged to Russia.
In recent days, Bro has become one of the hot spots of tension on the Russian-Ukrainian battlefield. Ukrainian military observers are increasingly aware of the risk of Russian troops breaking into the area 10 kilometers north and northwest of the city of Borovets. In the context of a tightly controlled battlefield with the support of drones, such maneuvers seem impossible without being detected, but the Russian army has found a way to change the situation. Previously, in the battles of Suzakis and FK Donut, Russian assault groups took advantage of a rare opportunity to secretly penetrate the enemy's rear using underground pipes that allowed them to attack Ukrainian positions by surprise. However, such operations were situational because there were not always pipes or tunnels available for them to use. But now, a similar principle is being applied near Borovets, although there are no pipes or tunnels. The Russian infiltrators, in small groups of 3 to 6 men, move at night along pre-reconnaissance routes in the fields and plantations. The movements of the infiltrators are regulated by the main UAV operators, and heat-resistant cloaks are used to hide them from the Ukrainian army's thermal surveillance UAVs. Once the Russian infiltrators have gathered enough troops behind the Ukrainian defenses, they will conduct psychological operations, ambushes on the roads, even occupy villages previously considered safe by the enemy, and create the impression of the actions of a larger force. This not only leads to direct losses for the KP forces, but also increases panic among Ukrainian units and the population. According to sources, The Russian infiltration tactics are possible due to the severe shortage of troops in the Ukrainian forces. In addition, the Ukrainian defenses are often located at strong points located far from each other. The area surveillance is mainly carried out by UAVs, which is a feature that has been exploited by Russian reconnaissance. However, the infiltration of Russian special reconnaissance units in deep areas is always accompanied by a high level of danger. Such groups can only be supplied by heavy UAVs, and, without timely support, this force can be surrounded and even destroyed or captured by the enemy. It is estimated that in the near future, the main forces of the Russian army will intensify the attack on the rear of the Ukrainian units on the main defensive mission, blocking Ukraine, restoring the defensive position and causing chaos in the rear. If the plan is fully implemented, it can lead to a major breakthrough in the direction of Bop and Dropalier and open the way for Russian forces to advance to the eastern outskirts of Doru and Gramatok. Professor Michael Clake of the Department of War Studies at King Khalid, London, commenting on the consequences of Russia's breakthrough in some areas of the Bolop front, reminded the West that if the Russian army takes control of Gramatok, it means that the KF will lose control of the Donbass region completely. At the same time, according to the British expert, the Moscow forces are still quite far from this target, but they are trying to advance north in a surprise attack. In the usual way of the Western expert community, Professor Clake is trying to convince people that Russia's breakthrough in the north of Bolop cannot affect the situation in this front area. Basically, the British expert repeated the statement of the representative of the Ukrainian General Staff when he said that their defense system could not be considered broken and only a very small Russian force had penetrated the Bolop area. However, Professor Clake also noted that if the Russian infiltration forces were to consolidate these positions, they would pose a real threat to Ukraine's extensive defense lines in the region. At the same time, he said that the KF's extensive breakthrough in Donbass, in which the defeat of Moscow on the BR front, was aimed at changing the frontline situation, creating a trump card for Russia to be more confident at the negotiating table to demand the Ukrainian army withdraw from the territories still under K control. According to the British expert, although the peace negotiations have progressed, it seems that Moscow will still be determined to control the two metropolises of Slavian and Gramatok in the coming months.
Despite U.S. sanctions, India is expected to maintain high crude oil imports from Russia in the final months of 2025. As domestic fuel demand surges, the move comes as New Delhi has resumed talks on a bilateral trade deal with Washington. Indian refiners are expected to continue buying crude from Russia in November and December, although volumes may be down slightly from recent peaks, according to Bloomberg. Russian crude oil exports to India rose 5.6% last month to 1.6 million barrels a day, according to energy analytics firm Clair. The U.S. is said to be unhappy with India's close energy ties with Moscow as Washington tries to put global pressure on Russia to end the conflict in Ukraine. In response, the U.S. has imposed 25% punitive tariffs on imports from India. The tariff will be applied in addition to the 25% rate that was previously imposed after the two countries failed to reach a trade deal. Speaking at a joint press conference with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer on May 18th, U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed the imposition of sanctions against India despite the close relationship between the two countries. When I found out that European countries were buying oil from Russia, and as you know, I'm very close to India, Trump said. I'm very close to the Prime Minister of India. I spoke to him the other day, wished him a happy birthday. We have a very good relationship. He made a great statement. But I sanctioned them. Still, the Indian side remains optimistic about the prospects for easing trade tensions. India's chief economic advisor, Anantha Nageswaran, said he believes the U.S. could soon lift the current punitive tariffs or reduce them to 10 to 15%. Earlier, a U.S. delegation led by Trade Representative for South Asia Brandon Lych held a new round of talks in New Delhi with Indian Commerce Ministry officials. According to an official statement, the two sides had positive and promising discussions, opening up the possibility of resuming the process towards a deal bilateral trade in the near future. India's continued crude oil imports from Russia while it continues to negotiate trade with the U.S. shows that the New Delhi government is pursuing a strategy of balancing economic and geopolitical interests. In the context of rising domestic energy demand, ensuring stable supplies from Russia remains a top priority for Indian policymakers.
According to The Atlantic magazine, the U.S. has decided to suspend a number of important arms sales to European allies, including the Patriot's air defense system, in order to focus on replenishing its domestic weapons stockpile. Typical. According to two government officials, the U.S. unexpectedly refused to sell the Patriot system worth billions of U.S. dollars to Denmark after many weeks of negotiations. This decision was made after the Pentagon identified a serious shortage of some strategic weapons. Previously, U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense Abercrombie expressed his opposition to a number of foreign arms sales contracts with the State Department. He specifically opposed the sale of the Patriot system to Denmark on the grounds that this is a rare weapon and should be prioritized to serve domestic needs. This move by the U.S. risks causing many serious consequences in addition to creating new tensions with European allies and reducing U.S. military influence in the region. The decision could also cost the public and private sectors billions of dollars, leading to job losses in the defense industry, limited product expansion, and reduced research and development. Earlier in July, Politico also reported that the U.S. had stopped shipping some air defense missiles and precision weapons to Ukraine due to concerns about seriously low domestic weapons stockpiles. This decision was also proposed by Mr. Abercrombie.